Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about my latest addiction, Diablo 4. I've been putting the hours in, man. Shout out to Activision, sent over a review code my way. Been playing this since the pre-order window lifted. I didn't get an early review code, which apparently arrived early May. I tried my best, so I thank you all for your patience. And for those of you clicking on these videos, even when the reviews are a little late, I appreciate you so much, because competing with that embargo time when you're after that, ooh, it's an uphill battle, but thank you for showing up. Like I said, though, we're talking about Diablo 4, and man, I am hooked. Now, I made it no secret I was very excited for this game following the beta, where I posted my impressions and was thoroughly impressed with what was there, so much so that I turned the beta off after 2.5 hours and said, you know what, I'm gonna wait for launch because I really like this and I don't need to spoil any more for myself. I'm glad I did. This game is juicy. There's so much progression elements tied into it, so you're always unlocking something, getting something, changing something, and it feels like a limitless amount of content, which is typically overwhelming. I'll get into that in a moment. But at the same time, I just keep going and going and going because the game design is snappy, it flows extremely well, and I'm never spending too long on one thing, so no matter how big this game truly is, it feels bite-sized, it feels digestible, and for that, I just pick up this game and throw on either a podcast, some music, go on Discord with the homies, and bang, just play this game for another 5-6 hours a night. It is so much fun. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to deliver the full thoughts on Diablo 4. If you are new here, you are into day one reviews, sometimes the late reviews. Again, I try my best to get them out early when I do get those review codes, but sometimes it is truly out of my hands. Consider subscribing nonetheless. And with that, let's begin at the top with just a word of warning. Right now, as I'm reviewing this game, it is in the pre-order window. That does mean that I imagine the player base is a lot smaller now than what it'll be after the full launch of the game, because to get in, you got to pay like $90-ish. And I know that's not what everyone who's hyped for the game actually wants to do, and they have an ounce of patience, and that's understandable. The reason I start off with that is because towards some of my later sessions, I was experiencing more and more lag. You see, Diablo 4, always online game, and I'm starting to see why this could become a problem, because when I'm running around and I'm rubber banding in an action RPG that gets really frantic, oh, it can be frustrating, to the point where for the first time in my 30+ hours with the game, I just went, you know what? I'm shutting it off for the night. And I never had 1 ounce of desire to do that, but the lag can get like that. And I just want to make sure I don't skim over that for starting, because I understand it can be in a completely different place in another handful of days, another week or so. Out the gate, I was impressed by the stability, but there were points it got progressively worse, and you started to see how always online Diablo can be really cool with some elements, but also frustrating in this regard. So I just wanted to make sure we tackled that first and foremost. But where always online shines is that even if you're playing by yourself, there is still this cooperative element, such as when you're roaming the open world and you find an event and you see other players hop in, to even roaming towns and seeing other players, talking to traders, accepting quests. It's an online vibe, but it's not intrusive. When I go into dungeons, it's not like I'm seeing 1,000,001 other players, such as in an MMO. It manages to feel equal single player and multiplayer, which is insane to really think about. But what's beautiful about this game is it also has cross-play and cross-progression. Shout out to my trophy hunters, by the way. Let's say you get all the achievements on Xbox and you're like, you know, I want a free platinum. You can literally buy the PlayStation version and just pop the entire trophy list because of how cross-progression works, which I thought was really cool. But this is where gaming nowadays does shine. There's a lot of things that we've seen with how things have progressed across the industry, with monetization, with live service, etc., that has been frustrating when it comes to online components. But crossplay is one of the few true boons of modern gaming. And with this, it's been fantastic to have my friend who's over on PlayStation 5 be able to play with me over on Series X, and then have another buddy hop in who got the game on PC, and we're playing together no matter the console. I know it's not exclusive to Diablo 4, but it's really nice just to be able to say, hey, pick up the game, not hey, pick up the game on Xbox, because of the design of the game and how much loot there is and how much different builds there are and how great the progression is. It really makes it where like getting a friend in and starting a new build is never a hang up at all. It's actually a welcome opportunity. So getting people involved and having that cross-play, cross-progression support really lets the game flourish. But as an RPG fan, what I love about this game more than anything is the builds. You see, I grew up on games like Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Champions Return to Arms, Untold Legends. I love these action RPGs, and it's so funny how I managed to steer my way around Diablo until Diablo 3 finally came out. And even then, I missed the launch of it until they did the Ultimate Evil Edition, and I played it on my PS4. So I managed to avoid this great franchise for so long, which plays to so many of the things I love in video games. I love the frantic action. I love the loot vomits. I love the continuous tinkering of my builds. I love exploring dungeons. I love co-op. And Diablo, in my opinion, does it the best, even if I have so much nostalgia for Dark Alliance, if I have so much nostalgia for Champions and so on. Just Diablo's snappiness, its action-focused gameplay with 3 and on, to me, is just the bee's knees. It's fantastic. And in Diablo 4, they just crank it up a notch. So I am playing as a necromancer right now. I'm just about to hit level 50, and this is a fun class, man. I've never played as necromancer. Like in Diablo 3, I played as a monk, but in Diablo 4, the augmentations begin just with your basic attack. Like every class has 4 different basic attacks that do very different things. I started off using a scythe and just wiping out waves of enemies that way, more of a melee focus, but then I shifted to more ranged combat when I found a legendary 2-handed sword that needed decompose, a different basic attack. So into my skill tree I went. I respec'd my entire character, and now I have a legendary effect that allows me to chain to multiple enemies, and I'm doing massive damage over time with a shadow build. But maybe you want to do a bloody mess kind of build and start wiping people out in that manner. There are so many ways to approach the same character that not only is there replayability in picking a separate class and just going a different way, there's also replayability in just going to the same class in multiple other options. What's wonderful though is that you can respec whenever you want. And so I love that, because as I got certain pieces of legendary equipment, as they finally started to drop for me in the later levels, it was one of those moments where I'm like, ah, man, I saw that decompose thing and I thought all these stats are great, but I don't have that. But what I did was memorized all of my stats, all my upgrades. I said, what if I just retooled for 11,000 gold and just changed my entire build to fit this legendary? And I'm so glad I did. But just the ability to tinker at any moment in time and for it to all be quick and snappy is such welcome quality of life, while also focusing on the game's strengths. You see, for those of you who listened to Defining Duke, you may be a little surprised that when I said Diablo 4 is a massive video game, that I don't mind sticking with it, because I also said in a recent episode that I'm thinking about dropping Tears of the Kingdom because of just how I feel massive the game is. What? One's massive, the other's massive. What's the difference here? I just think it's the sense of progression. The feeling of I completed something, I got, by the way, properly rewarded for it, and now I'm gonna go to the next thing. You see, I have patience for pretty much any genre, any game, but I don't have patience for when a sequel starts to lack some quality of life deeper into the game until I get to the end game. Whereas Diablo 4, the quality of life does not have to be earned. It's very immediate. And I'm willing to take on its absolutely massive world, because you could just take little bites out of it whenever you want. Take out a couple of dungeons, boom, your session's done. Maybe do a couple of quests, boom, your session's done. Dialogue never goes on longer than a couple of minutes at most in the cinematics, but usually when you get a side quest, it's like they have a 3-line limit here. They never want you stopping and not doing anything for too long. And that's what makes this game great. It understands its strengths, but at the same time still manages to tell a better story than any other prior Diablo game that I have personally played. You see, the focus in this game on Lilith, this new villain, and the manipulation of the people of Sanctuary, and how far-reaching she is, and the impact of her powers, I just found her oddly compelling. I will say that I feel the story begins to taper off a little bit as I got deeper into it. Now, that's also by nature of, it's an open world game, Maddie, so you're gonna get distracted. There's not that same urgency as a linear game, so yeah, the story does fall to the wayside. You can just mainline it because everything scales to your level, so if you just want a gun for the main story, you can. There's no going out to the open world, farm a couple of side quests here, do this event here. Now you can go over and do do this quest. There's none of that, which I thought was great. So you get to take the game truly at your own pace. Again, a compliment to the game's design. However, for those of you who got time for the open world, but also really like the story, this is where it can suffer a bit. The quality of the story, though, is much higher, especially the focus on cinematics. It's absolutely fantastic in that regard. I do think it tapers off a little bit as well, just because Lilith is such an interesting main villain, and I just wish it wasn't such a she's working from the shadows kind of main story. Like, that direct encounter you get in the early openings of the game is so good, and you just want more of that in those first couple of hours. And I get why we're chasing her and how we're chasing her down and whatnot, but I just wish there was a little bit more interaction, and you get it in certain ways, and you can definitely feel her impact on this world. So it makes her a presence, but that interaction with the villain, it may just be a personal quirk of mine. I just find it so important in storytelling that your villain must be present. It cannot just be voice logs and little cutscenes here and there. Your villain must be whoop, right there in front of you, as far as I'm concerned, and this game doesn't do that. But is that to its detriment? No. Quite frankly, you could go through this whole game and not pay attention to the story and be completely fine and still absolutely love it, because again, the story gets enough focus to matter, but it doesn't get so much focus that it is absolutely where the game hangs its hat on. In fact, there are many times where I was just tuned out of side quests. I was just like, yep, give me some loot. Yep, don't really care. It can be that type of game for you. But customization really is the name of the game. From your builds to your loot to, heck, even for a necromancer, the minions that follow me around, you can tailor their little passive abilities and what they'll do for you. Every ounce of this game is customizable, even to your player title, to your look. The character creator is fantastic. Just this game is all about customization and leans heavily into it. And that's what makes it so appealing, is that just anytime I go into the game, it feels like every session is going to be different. I'm going to go in as one player and come out with an almost entirely different build. Now, there is a degree of, as you all know, you get to the later game of Diablo and you start to settle in, and you do have that here. I just love the thought that was really put into a lot of these builds, the passives that reinforce certain playstyles. There are some I'm not going to unlock, but again, for my necromancer, I love that there were passives that directly augmented how, for example, my corpse explosion ability works. Normally, it's, as the name would suggest, a body blowing up. It's almost like a mini bomb that affects a lot of enemies in an area, but I turn it, as you'll see in some of the gameplay, into this swirling pool of darkness, because I have skills that augment my darkness damage being dealt. So I do a lot of damage over time, but that works really well for my build because I will shred enemies. It's, again, extremely rewarding to see that build come together. That is what Diablo is all about, and I think it's the best they've ever done it here. Not only because of how good it feels, but also the sheer variety and approachability of it all. It's just, again, magnificent design that you never get lost in doing all this. It's never confusing. It's very simple, easy to read, easy to understand, and again, just a tip of the cap to Activision Blizzard on this one. They killed it. Now, because it is an online game, we gotta also talk about monetization. There is a storefront, and yeah, it's ridiculously priced. I mean, there was an armor set here for $25. Look, I know some people are going to hand wave it because, oh, it's finally a great Blizzard game. Finally, they're not screwing it up. Why does it matter? The game's great. You don't have to get it anyway. All of this is true. Not once in my entire playthrough have I been incentivized to go spend money. No one time have I even gotten a notification about this store. It's very well possible if you do not pay attention to the UI when you go in the menus, you won't even know there's an in-game store. And all that is true, but still it doesn't justify the prices, because it reminds me of where we were with Halo Infinite. I remember Halo Infinite came out and it was during a period of time everyone was loving on it, and no one was really talking about that storefront until about a month or two in, when the hype tapered off and this was okay, finally a problem. But let's address it now. This store is ridiculously priced in a lot of ways. Is it ignorable? 100%, but there are going to be a ton of people who want to spend on it because you get some pretty nice looking stuff there. There's no doubt about it. The presentation definitely received a major bump in quality. This is not just in the way that cinematics are shot. It goes beyond that, because I think that action RPGs can very easily get away with not being visually up to snuff, which I'm always fine with because it's top down, the camera's far away, you're not getting close and intimate with the details. But in this game you do, not only because of the cutscenes, but just the world space itself is decorated beautifully. The lighting, the weather effects, it all looks and feels so real, and surprisingly helps the game out a lot. The reason I say surprisingly is Again, when I play these action RPGs, there's so much chaos on screen that it's hard to even notice the detail, but the efforts they go to in this game to make it look visually appealing truly did work for me. That also goes for audio, from sound effects like my corpse explosion, which is just nasty, all the way to even voice acting. I mean, it's just top-notch stuff across the board. Connection issues aside, storefront issues aside, this has been one of my favorites of the year. I'm really impressed by what Diablo 4 has brought to the table because I can see myself hanging for a while. And what I love about it, again, is its bite-sized nature. And I love that, quite frankly, as someone who's on Discord almost every single night with my friends, I love that I can just park it in there and I don't got to think about when do I got to mute my mic so I can pay attention to my story game. I got a great one here that I can just fire up, talk with the boys, and just enjoy some nice beat 'em up action here. Much like the customization in the game, it's about as simple or as deep as you want the experience to be. And so yeah, I'm enjoying Diablo 4 a lot, and I can't help but recommend it for those of you who are thinking about picking it up, especially if you're looking for a good co-op game. I felt particularly burned by Redfall because I thought at least it would be a fun co-op open world game. This is the one that you have been waiting for. What I would say is just hold a little bit back just to make sure the connection and servers are fine when the full launch goes on, because I could see that potentially being an issue with some of the lag I experience. It just becomes unplayable, which again is frustrating in one regard. With that, ladies and gentlemen, take excellent care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing your thoughts on Diablo 4 in the comments down below. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below, and a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.